people have come to you all day long talking about, their needs in terms of funding for the filmmaking business they're involved in. But you yourself have to grapple with that, don't you?
It's a hard part of the job, I always find, for a producer. People assume it is the job. It's only a part of the job, but without it, obviously, nothing happens. I think it's getting increasingly more difficult in some ways because the broadcasters are not necessarily quite as varied in the kind of films that they want to take or commission anymore. From my own point of view, I've been working in films in the Arabic language in the last 2 years, international films, which really there's no place for on UK television, although there is in America and in the Middle East and in other European countries. So I think we've got to a point where you have to think really laterally about how to put a funding package together. And it is a package and sometimes
when you say laterally, like think around the problem?
Well, yes, because when I brought my film here last year, I think, which was Donor Unknown, that film, I had funding from places like the Wellcome Trust, which is really a foundation that doesn't just deal in film. Film's a tiny part of what they do. They deal in research and projects that bring biomedical issues to a wider audience. They gave me a large part of the funding for the film, well, a considerable part of the funding, and then other funders came in, film funders, film foundations, broadcasters came in as people got interested in the characters and the subject. But a lot of the research was done with trust funding from Wellcome that actually was not particularly film funding. So I'm having to think all the time. I was struck when I saw Volkswagen Joe that the director said that his funding had come from some kind of cross-border...
Yes, it was an initiative put together by the British and the Irish governments to put a fund in place that would develop the border counties out of the trauma that occurred from the Troubles.
And film was one way of doing that. Presumably that funding was used for all kinds of
absolutely, from
projects.
literally buses for whatever it is through to making a film. And that came out of the Bell Turbot Dramatic Society, apparently.
Oh, really?
Brian Dean was saying, a little group that had a lovely stage play.
Yes.
And he picked up on and was able to make a film out of an adapted version of that for film. For film.
Yes.
So 30 minutes of film came out of that.
Yes.
But it came out of the sourced funding from the peace initiative that took place in Northern Ireland following the Troubles. So you're right, it is diverse,
I think those kind of areas are really interesting to look into if you're thinking about, my film has a very particular interest in this community for this constituency of audience.
Yes.
Then you can start to think about other sources of funding as well as film foundations, broadcasters, crowdfunding, all those
Absolutely. Tell me about the difficulties that people might have in relation to funding for pet ideas that turn into films. Sometimes they'll shoot ahead, won't they, and start the process without the funding being fully in place. Is that a dangerous proposition?
Well, I don't know if I can say it's dangerous because it's something I've done in the last 2 years. I mean, I've last 3 or 4 years actually with Donor Unknown. We had funding released to do some development, and once we'd started the development and done filming for the development, we wanted to continue filming, so we just continued filming, and money came in different kinds of different rates, different points in the process, and then we had to hold up for a while and just say we have to wait now before we get a whole lot more. But I think it can be dangerous. Of course it can be dangerous if you're funding it all yourself. If you can get yourself some money up front, I see no real problem in that kind of snowball of effect of, I've got a bit of funding, I'll do a bit of filming, right, I'll go and show what I've done, I'll cut a trailer from that, show what I've done, cut some selected scenes from the next bit of filming, show someone else what I've done. The problem is everybody who commissions has a different kind of, they want to see something different. They don't all want to see a 2 or 3 minute trailer. Sometimes they say, I need to see a bit more of the main character. I need to see some selected scenes.
That's not done yet or whatever it is. We haven't covered that. So you have to bear in mind then when you get to commissioning, what the commissioners are thinking. Like coming to them with something that's half cooked, if you know what I mean. It might be that they would have a different view on that, and that you'd have to go back to scratch again. That's
right. But I think with fiction, obviously, I mean, I was talking to someone this morning, he was saying, but I can't really go out and just film a little bit, And I said, no, you can't, because for fiction, you need your shoot. Your shoot is, you're getting all those resources in. You're going to need to
But with a documentary, you can perhaps do it and load up in that way.
Yes, you can actually fund as you go, really, to a greater extent. Although obviously, it would be lovely if the large part of the proportion of the money came up front. It doesn't always work like that.
Commissioning it's shrinking in Ireland. In other words, there's the media, the RTEs, the TG Cars. They're actually slowing down the process. They're buying in stuff at this stage and saying, look, we'll give you $3,000 instead of the 25 grand that you needed for this project. So you have to find it elsewhere. But at least you know it. What's going to happen for the future in Britain, in Ireland, elsewhere? You'll be aware of Britain yourself because that's where your work is mainly. But where does funding lie? Where's the future of it lie? Commissions are going to decrease, I would imagine.
Well, I think the variety of commissions is going to narrow. I think that sort of sense of the diversity is decreasing, and that's the shame of it. Well, I do think that obviously I think there are individual investors, there's crowdfunding, there's all that, but I do think there is actually thinking about your film's kind of purpose in the world and actually looking at kind of sources of funding, as we said with Volkswagen Joe, that actually are sort of used to make your film have a role in the world, really, a purpose. I see sort of sources of funding like that. I mean, I'm going to say that, aren't I? Because a lot of the documentaries I make are about things that I want people to start talking about. So they do have a life in the world beyond pleasure and entertainment. They do have another life as well. I think it's harder to say that with fiction, except I suppose it's online, it's actually creating your work for, I don't know, for Netflix, for all sorts of other online kind of platforms that didn't exist 20 years ago.
They're new, they're out there now, aren't they?
Yes, they're out there now, and they're commissioning now. Yes.
What are you doing these days?
Well, I've just finished a film that I could have brought here this year, but I didn't think it was necessarily a good fit for this festival. But it's a film about Morocco's first female Muslim leaders. It's quite a serious, serious and sort of purposeful film. But it's called Casablanca Calling, and that's going to have a UK screening in a couple of weeks at a festival in London. We started to make another film in Morocco, which will be out at the end of the year, which is about Morocco's first professional circus. It's about the young performers of that first professional circus, who are young people who've come from, very, very diverse backgrounds, off the streets, a lot of them, and are finding a career in art. And it's quite an interesting film about, how the faith in Morocco, Islam, fits with creative freedom and self-expression. So that's quite interesting. And then I'm developing a film with teenagers with learning disabilities. And really, I think this is going to be a drama documentary. It's going to actually draw on their documentary experience to create a script about the way they experience the world. So that's
good.
Yeah, called Wrong Planet.
And does the process of separating those out in your head, though, you're working on 3 different projects. They might be at different stages. Can you snap from one to the other?
I find it quite difficult, and I find there's always one that's getting serious neglect. So like the 2 Moroccan projects have taken a lot of time and energy lately with trying to sell the first Moroccan one, get the second one edited. And so the third one, the one in development, which I'm really loving when I do turn my attention to it, has had a little bit of neglect for the last 6 weeks or so, but I'm getting back into it now. So I find it quite difficult to snap between, and I sometimes look enviously at people who work on one thing at a time. But
can I say thank you to you, Hilary, for coming in to us today, and lovely to see you again.
And this is such a great festival.
It's a great festival.
It's just, everybody's been saying to me today, this is amazing. It's like family. It's like a kind of, you have access to everybody. Anybody is talking to anybody. All sorts of chance meetings coming out of it. I think it's really, really interesting. And
I think, to a man and to a woman, that's the view of it.
It seems to be, doesn't it? It's lovely to hear people coming in. I've been to so many festivals where you feel it's all very competitive in the sense of, sort of everybody's pushing, everybody's shoving, and here you just feel this real sense of people exchanging addresses, contact details, ideas. It's lovely. It's lovely.